John Chaney, Hall of Famer, one of my mentors, and I don't know if there's anybody I respect more than you. Our lives have been interwoven for so many times, from 25th and Diamond to 4th and Chunk and the Eastern League and so forth. John, let's talk a little bit about John Chaney, the life and times of John Chaney. You were born and raised in what people captured in as the Black Bottom in Florida, down in the Jacksonville area. Talk to us a little bit of what was life like for John Chaney in those days in what I guess was a segregated Florida.
Well, I think, it was perhaps the basis for who I am today and what I feel so strongly about. I was born in a place in Jacksonville where it was called Black Bottom, and we were living in a little home where when it rained, the water would come into, we couldn't have rugs because the water would come into the from the back porch all the way in, and frogs would be in the house. So it was you're talking about abject poverty. Living in that kind of environment, whatever I was to be, or whatever I could be, or anybody else, you had to make a choice, whether it was going to be that or something else. And whatever that something else was, it had to be better than what I found myself in, living there. And I was there with a brother and a sister and a stepfather. I don't know who my father was at the time, and I still don't. But I saw all kinds of things. We go to a movie called The Ritz, and I think they just redid the Ritz. I think it's still there on State Street. And I can remember my mom one night telling us to get in the house because down the street I could see a cross burning with the Ku Klux Klan. And we would all hide underneath the bed at that time. And that was a very, very difficult time. The Second World War, as I can remember, during those times had come about. My uncle had gone to war and he felt that things were going to be different because by going to the war, which they didn't allow blacks, really, fully didn't accept them in the war. And things didn't change until Truman was in there, I guess, where both the airmen and from Tuskegee, I can remember situations of that kind, but that's when we found that they were not served right. They fought and they went in there to gain equality, really. That's what they were looking for, blacks. And I guess that's the difference between then and now in so many ways, because this is a volunteer service that we have now. But then everybody believed that a slip of the lip would sink a ship. Everybody believed that if you served the United States war, if you fought in the war, you could possibly find yourself in a better place when they came back. That's when we'd all crowd in the room, and a person like a Sugar Ray Robinson, who was a hero, or Joe Louis was our hero. We didn't have no television, so everybody in the block would go into one room and sit around the radio. We'd be looking at the radio like you look at television today. And I can remember strongly a guy when he was fighting what they call a bum a week, a bum a month, whatever, because he fought more than anybody as a heavyweight. That's how they got him on taxation so much. But the thing about it is that we sit there, and I can remember fighting a guy who named by the name of Big Tony Galento. And he's just like he'd come out of a bar. He was robust and everything. And I can remember in the first round, he comes out, and I remember just like yesterday, he comes out, and my God, he hits Lewis, knocks Lewis down, and the crowd, you can hear the crowd going, ah, and we were crying, oh, he's down, crying, and then we hear, and still the heavyweight champion of the world, Joe Louis, the big bomber. He got up off the floor and knocked him out, but he was our hero. We didn't have baseball, so we had to listen to things about Jackie Robinson. I can remember when he won the batting titles. I think it was 342 at that time. So we had to believe in things, because the greatest thing that happened to us is that we always had hope. I came up at a time when people were fighting for hope. All of them were fighting for hope. Even a great white senator, Thaddeus Stevens, who's right here in Gettysburg. He had harbored some slaves that had come from the South. He fought for them. In fact, he fought Lincoln because he didn't think Lincoln had done enough at the time. But these were some of the people that I respected and thought of were heroes, because I always look back at one of my earlier heroes, which was the great black from Rutgers. The greatest athlete was All-American Paul Robeson. He was the guy that we thought of and looked at as somebody that we could revere. And believe it or not, he was somebody who fought for our rights earlier. In fact, he ended up going to Russia because he was just so upset over this country. But it was a time when so much happened that happened before Martin Luther King and many of our other heroes came about. But that's the way we develop hope, John, from those guys.
And in all of this, John, somewhere in there, you acquired the nickname as a youngster Cherokee. How did that come about?
Well, that came about in when my stepfather came here. He came here because of the war. Mm-hmm. 1 year before we came to Philadelphia from Jacksonville, and at that time, if you were serving in a war plant, if you were making war supplies, if you were working, he came here to work in Sun Shipyards in Chester. Working there, he wasn't going to be drafted. So he was running from Jacksonville to come where all the shipbuilding was, since he was a carpenter, and work there and sit for us 1 year later. Your classification was one in which you weren't going to be drafted if you were working in war plants at the time, serving your country during a time of war. So he came and sent for us 1 year later. And that's when we came to Philadelphia 1 year after he'd been here. And I then started playing basketball. Couldn't even put on, I had my knee pads on backwards. I can remember the guys picking at me because I had them on backwards. I didn't know what I was doing. But finally, I did pretty good in junior high school at Barrett Junior High. I went to Ben Franklin. In 1951, I was voted the best player in the state here, in all public, most valuable player and everything in this city. In fact, they gave me a 21-jewel Hamilton watch at that time. They don't give that anymore. But I can remember getting that award. Tom Gola was the best player in the Catholic League, and he was a 4-time All-American in the city, and he's in the Hall of Fame also.
LaSalle.
Yeah, from LaSalle. And I remember Tommy coming in, and I had my daddy's suit on, big old wide. I was skinny, almost like this. Had my daddy's suit on to get my award, and I was scared. Those zoot suits, they wearing them now, double-breasted, right?
Yeah.
Well, that went around me twice almost, and a big old flapjack tie, and that little peanut head of mine. And I went in the bathroom, and I can remember Tommy coming, "Come on, they're going to take our picture, John, get out of there." I was standing up on the toilet like this with my feet up, so nobody knew where I was. But I can remember that picture of us, and many others was on there, Fannin and so many other great players was on there on that picture of all public and all interacademic and all Catholic. But in high school, because the bones of my face was like this, sunk in, they called me Cherokee because I looked like somewhat, in their impression, was that I was an Indian.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I may have had Indian qualities.
You probably
I don't
had
know.
a little Indian blood in you.
Yeah.
You've been a damn warrior all your life. I know that.
I was honored. In fact, the award that I got that night, it was said that because I had, I remember being called a foul. I fouled the guy because I was someone. Boy, I'm gonna play you chest to chest. You got to go through me. There's no way you going around me. And if you do, I'm damn sure gonna foul you. You know, especially if I know you could shoot. but but I can remember distinctly me that year having changed my life. It was important. And they named the award after a guy named Abe Abrams. He was an old referee. They still have that award today for these kids. And he was refereeing the game. And I can remember me spitting after a foul called me. Not spitting on him, anybody, but just took a spit because I was so pissed off at the foul that was called on me. And Abe Abrams, they threw me out the game, but that was early in the season. That in itself transformed my life because he came in the dressing room that later on, doing that at the end of that game to tell me that I had a chance to become a great player if I just went on from then on. Good behavior, good attitude. From then on, I was a model citizen, and I ended up playing extremely well the rest of the year. And that was a story that he told when he presented me with the watch for most valuable player, how I had gone from bad to being good, and now 80 years old, I'm bad again. So,
John, so here you are. You're the player of the year in the public schools in Philadelphia. A lot of people probably don't understand back in those days, neither the public schools or the Catholic schools participated in the state championship tournament. But here you are, the player of the year in the public schools, and yet Villanova, Temple, LaSalle, Penn, St. Joe's, none of them offered you a scholarship. Did that bother you, John, that none of them offered you a scholarship?
I think that during that time, the only thing that an athlete, and especially black athletes, wanted to do was just to play and have fun all of your life. And it was becoming a stage where it wasn't so easy to get into college. Even your parents didn't think that it was possible for many parents. Try and remember, many of the schools in the South were either, in the black colleges, were sister schools. And at that time, they didn't offer scholarship. They offered you a situation where you could try out. Many thousands of kids would go to colleges in the South and some of the black schools, and they'd go home. Lacey Brown was one that came from Tillerson College after he couldn't make it there, came to Bethune-Cookman College where I had come, and found that that he had to make the team. They have a tryout. And all those that didn't make it, didn't get a mule ticket or whatever, you were sent back home. Now here in the city, people still don't understand. The 5 schools we have, these great schools, they were part-time scholarships. There were no full scholarships. Plus, part-time scholarship wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to get away from my home. I didn't like living in a house where there was roaches and rats and whatever. So my choice was to go anywhere, once again, rather than stay in that quagmire in South Philly. So here I am sitting in an ideal place where they didn't have dormitories at Temple. There were no dormitories at LaSalle. Al Lewis and all those guys, they had to commute. Now here I was given, in high school, my daddy says, I want you, at that time they said, look, you get out of high school, you just go get a job. There was no forward thinking. There was no idea that college was possible. And to talk about a scholarship, and I'm gonna have to pay car fare and have to be given lunch money for another 4 years, nobody offered me a scholarship, not one. Not one in this city. And as I say, not even a part-time scholarship. Try to remember Jay Norman and all those guys, they were either on a part-time with work study and given a laundry fee of about $15 a month or whatever, but there were no campuses. And certainly there were no black players at Villanova. There were no black players at Penn, to my knowledge. And only LaSalle may have had them. And Temple.
Jackie Moore.
Jackie Moore was the first. He was also the first to play with the Warriors as a black player. And then at Vernon Young was the other one who was the first black player to play on Temple's basketball team. But that was all part-time. So I couldn't afford it. So when the coach from Bethune-Cookman came to Philadelphia and told me he was taking me down, I packed my bags immediately. After that, Big House comes here looking for me 1 day late. And that's why Big House used to say to me, doggone it, I missed you. You should have been playing for me. You should have been. I said, well, you came a day late, Big House. John McClendon, all of our great coaches, Hall of Famers, great guys. John, and I missed out playing for them.
John, what kind of player were you at Bethune-Cookman?
Well, at the time, Hopkins was one of the top scorers in the country at Grambling.
Yeah, Bob Hopkins.
Bob Hopkins, great player. And I think he ended up with Syracuse Nationals later on.
Played in the NBA for a long time.
Yeah. And see, that's when they had 5 or 6, 7 drafts. Now they only have a first and second round. These had 7 drafts. And I think I was drafted by the Celtics or the Syracuse. I'm not sure now. But that was way up. 4th or 5th round and whatever. So the Globetrotters came and got me. But I was a black All-American that time. But they didn't keep stats. I mean, I scored well over 2,000 points in the 4 years that I was in school. And but the only way you could find out what you were or what scores you made, there was an old black paper, both the Pittsburgh Courier or either Chicago Tribune or something like that. And you had to go to the library.
Washington, D.C. used to have the Afro-American.
Afro-American, yeah. And the paper had it, news for and about colored people. So the only way we could get it is you had to go to the library and the paper would come the following week in the library. So your news that you got was always late. You know what I'm saying? And one of the things about the black colleges was that they established their own schedule. They said, well, I'm playing this team, that team, that team, so that they could get to Tuskegee, where many of the championships were held at Tuskegee in the SIC, that's the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, where all of them now has become mixed into what they call the SWAC and the MEAC. But we were in the SIAC, which was before. And all those schools, I played against teams like Texas Southern with Woody Salisbury and those guys.
Another guy, he played here in Philadelphia.
He was the Rookie of the Year one year. And then Andy Johnson, who came out of California, he was with the Globetrotters at the same time as I. But I think what happened then is that Jerry Rulo, who used to play with and Stan Novak, who used to play with Penn, they came to me and said, we want you to come back home. You can teach during the weekdays, and you can play in the Eastern Pro League and gain some salary. So I came back, became a substitute teacher, and then later on became a permanent teacher because the Eastern League was on the weekend. So I left Chicago, where we're staying.
Who did you play with in Eastern League?
Oh my God!
Allentown.
Well, we played against. I played with Sunbury.
Sunbury, yeah.
Yeah. And when they drafted you, they said 3 people. You know, they traded 3 people to get you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, for what? You know, what the devil they trade 3 people to get George? George is going to take all the shots out of the air and put them in the basket, and I don't get credit for my basket. I said, he's a little baby, a baby Wilt. Because you know, that's what Wilt had. He had the best of all worlds because he could take your shot offensively. You could shoot it from the corner. There wasn't no offensive goaltending. When these guys played, there wasn't no offense. They just take your shot out there and say, well, I'm going to put it.
Or you guide it the rest of the way toward the rim and put it in the basket.
Those were the days when the rules were no rules. And then all of a sudden they say, we got to stop these guys. So they enlarged the pivot from 6 feet to 12 feet. Then they went into offensive goaltending and defense. But some people think that Russell was, no, that was Wilt.
No, I tell people all the time, John, Wilt constituted more rule changes than any player in the history of the game.
Absolutely. Yeah, he couldn't follow. See, he was a bad foul shooter, but I think a great deal of that was psychological because I remember them hiring, one time they hired a person to hypnotize Wilt because he tried this side of the foul line, that side. Back up. He tried jump shoot. He tried underhand. Yeah. He tried everything. And then he would shoot it and go across the line and get his own rebound. So what they did was, they said, gee, let's hire somebody to teach. You can't. Come on, man. You got the recruiter shooter. You don't go around hiring. They hire you as a coach, and you go hire somebody else to teach somebody how to shoot in the NBA. They don't do that. You got to get talent. Heck with that. So with Wilt, they had to come up with, you can't cross that foul line until the ball hits the basket. So all the rule book was changed.
Same thing, John, you could, because if you remember at Overbrook, that you used to be able to take the ball out of bounds behind the backboard. And at Overbrook, they would stand Wilt in the lane, throw the ball over the top of the backboard. Wilt would catch it and dunk it. So then they said, okay, that's it. You can't take the ball out behind the backboard anymore.
But he still would grab. I mean, you talk about grabbing shots out the air. That was Wilt. And it was quite an athlete because, you know, he participated in track. He was high jumping. And he sometimes I could see pictures. You could see pictures of him when he played with Kansas. You'd find him bringing the ball, leading the break, bringing the ball up and faking it over here and passing it over there, you know. But those are the kind of guys that we found, you know, the jumpers. This man was a leaper. And, you know, I can remember one time we were playing not too far from here, Mallory Playground. Now, we were playing outside. And George, it was George basketball. So George...
You need to stop telling this story because it's a lie.
We got tired of George. Every time somebody, me and Al Lewis got together and said, we got to stop George. George is on our team. He's taking the ball and taking all of our shots out the air. I said, time out, man. I said, you can't do that, George. You got us. He says, I'm taking my ball. So he would grab his ball and say, damn that, give me that ball. Go sit up on the hill. He would have sat up on the hill, wiping his face like this. We wouldn't let him quit. You talk about fun. It was, but there was great respect, even with a great deal of, you know, arguments and discussions and disagreement. But we had respect for each other at all times. And when one guy said, we're going to meet here, we're going to do this, everybody was just standing on a dime.